Hey, good evening, and welcome to, oops, make sure I got that right. Yeah, there we go. Welcome to Cosmic Blueprints, the offshoot and the partner and part of Outside the Box. Hi, I'm co-host Kate of Gaia. Just waiting for Tony to get here with our special guest tonight, Stephen Kelley. For those who want to get information on Stephen, you can get his book, actually, at lulu.com. That's LULU.com. And we'll get him to talk about that shortly as soon as we can get him on the air here. You know, the kind of fun we always have on Freedom Reigns, Outside the Box, and Cosmic Blueprints. And syncretism, you know, for some reason they don't like us talking too much, but that's kind of normal. I'm used to it, and I'm sure you are now as well. Anyway, and as far as I know, Peter will be calling in as well. So tonight's going to be a very outside-the-box show on Cosmic Blueprints, simply because of the work that Stephen Kelley has been a part of and has been witness to and has experienced. We did a show yesterday afternoon for me, evening in the UK, with Tony on TruthCentralRadio.com. And we had interviewed Stephen yesterday as well. So we're well-versed on what Stephen is about, and what we're going to try to do tonight is bring that to you so you get a really good idea of what this is all about. We're going to delve into some things that we have touched on many times, things like time travel, scalar waves, what have you. Tonight I think we're going to be focusing more on the scalar wave and the more scientific side of things, but I definitely want to get Stephen to have a bit of time where he can, tell a bit about his background to kind of get you, the Freedom Reign listeners, and my most beautiful friends, into the loop of what it is we're talking about. So as I'm waiting here for Tony to get on board and for Stephen, first time calling into a blog talk, so we're having a little bit of fun getting him logged in here, but no problem. I did a show on TheseChangingTimesRadio.ning.com a couple of hours ago with Tony and Kat Wolf, and we had the lovely Miranda joining us on that, going into lexicograms and what have you, so definitely a show worth grabbing on the archive side of things. And yeah, a lot of really neat information. We seem to uncover lots of neat stuff every show. So, I got to tell you, you miss one of these shows, you have missed something. So it's a good thing we do have archives. And right now, what I'm doing is I'm going around all the different rooms, posting the links so people are aware of what's going on right now. That's a hard thing. Cosmic Blueprints, hosting someone else's show until they show up. Anyway, trying to think what else interesting happened today. No, just the show, really. That was all that I found to be interesting today. So, and still no sign of Tony, still no sign of Stephen, and I'm waiting for Peter to show up. Oh, we do have some other things coming up on the horizon as far as I don't know, the legal wranglings, whatever the hell you want to call that crap. They like to hit us with in an illusional sense. So we've got lots of neat information there, but give you a few clues as to where I'm taking it in my perspective. Again, it's about gleaning those beautiful pearls of wisdom that we all so often get handed to us, but most times, 99 times out of 100 we miss. With the awakening, you'll find yourself being a little bit more adept at finding those pearls of wisdom, so that you're not so much the 99. Most people are actually missing 100 out of 100, but those that are awakened are probably batting at least a 50-50 now, where they're seeing at least half of those pearls of wisdom that are only going to keep you going more exponential. Anyway, so here's the perspective I'm going at. A couple of tools that I will be using in all future correspondence with those that would want to dupe and rule us. That will include natural, absolutely all organic, no chemical hemp paper, because you want to get the living tree of life, the mother plant of all mother plants on this planet, in her best form. Because if you're going to commit your covenant to any form of paper, it might as well be with the earth herself. And the only way you can commit a covenant with the earth is through your own blood. Symbols and symbology, well, that's kind of neat and fun and everything else. But, I'm kind of one to say I mean it. So my arsenal will include my own A-positive blood, along with some beeswax. Because you don't want to use that paraffin wax. You don't want to use that oil-based wax because it's more, synthetic. I'd rather just go for the real McCoy and get the real beeswax. If you look back through history, you'll know that with researching Robert Morningsky's Terra Papers, the second book that he put out. Oh, there we go. We got everybody here now. That's going to make Tony and Steve hot. You'll understand the relevance of the bees. And everybody showed up all at the same time. So we got Tony, you there?
I am indeed, Kate.
Okay, good. And Stephen, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me all right?
Yep, and we're going to be joined with another friend of ours who hangs out in our shows all the time. And we're going to let you go ripshot tonight, Steve, so don't you worry about that. Peter, you live.
Yeah, what do you know? Yeah, they revived me, the decedent, and brought me back to life. So then I got to put a claim in.
I love it. Well, don't forget to get your sheet of hemp paper with a little bit of beeswax, mix your blood into it, and make a nice seal on there, and box it in red, and throw a couple of other neat little things on there we'll get into next week. But that's how I'll be sending everything out from now on. See how they like me. Do they like orders? I'm not sure. But anyway, Tony, take the helm. I'm shutting up now.
Good grief. Are you serious?
Yeah, look.
No, it's all good. Okay, hello to everybody out there. It's great to be back on Cosmic Blueprints again. Tonight we've got a very special guest with us, as Kate was actually saying. We've done a couple of shows, on the information that Steve has just made public. Basically, Steve's just gone public with some information about a museum that's got some pretty interesting things under it. He's gone public about some what we call the tubes, which are some very high-speed craft that run under the surface of the Earth to various places all over the world, really, and lots of other interesting stuff, including other types of technology and free energy, anti-gravity, scalar weaponry, and all sorts of other things. So, hello, Stephen. It's a pleasure to have you on the show, mate.
Great to be here.
Excellent. I've just listened to your interview or should I say your speech, and it's some incredible stuff. I don't really know where to begin. There's so much material in there. It'd be easier, really. We've got quite a large audience with us tonight, so it'd be easier, really, if you give the people your own background, and that'll give everybody the starting block so we can get the show underway. So over to you, Steve.
Okay, well, as you know, it's quite a long story, and it covers quite a few years, but in a nutshell, worked in the electro-optics industry and the defense industry for quite a few years, went off on my own, got hooked up very quickly with the CIA, and also led into being associated with the NSA. And after that, I got involved with the Billy Meyer people and got exposed to Pleiadians, alien technology, beam ships, all of the reptoids and the different entities and all of their politics. Also got exposed to Bilderbergers and Templars and the underground facilities and everything involved with that. This led to a period of research in metaphysics and spiritual growth, and eventually becoming a Reiki master and a healer and a psychic. And that's my primary focus nowadays, and to get out there and teach people how to expand their own psychic skills.
Excellent. Beautiful stuff. I'm not sure actually where to begin. I suppose the easiest thing, possibly the best place to start, is the actual speech that you gave to them last weekend or the weekend. I don't know if you want to just give people the overview on that, and that'll be enough to start with.
Well, sure, I don't mind. We spoke about this briefly last night, with your audience, primarily because we were discussing the involvement of the Crown and the Queen with some of these Templar organizations and whatnot. But The big thing that I was revealing here this weekend over at the Alchemy event in Irvine was the fact that there's a base here, a big underground base in the Los Angeles area, which I believe is actually the crown jewel of the entire underground base system, and it's also the weakest link in the House of Cards because it's built underneath the Getty Museum, which is it's a civilian structure. It's privately owned, of course, by the Getty Foundation, but it's unlike all the rest of these top secret military bases. They tend to be on these bunkers. They tend to be located on bases or on federal property or in airports and things that we can't get easy access to. So this is probably the one facility out there that the public can actually walk around on top of and get really close and at the same time have no idea of what they're actually standing on.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been lucky enough to hear your speech, which I'll post a link up to in a moment. But you were saying how it's built nuclear-proof, and you were talking about the elevators and the armories within the museum, all sorts of arts and treasures that are stored in there. I wonder if you could give us a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, the Getty Museum was opened in roughly 2000, and it took them quite a few years to build this, kind of reminiscent of the Denver airport, over budget and all that sort of thing. But a few things that are curious about it. For one thing, the foundation, when they poured the concrete foundation for the building, it was the largest continuous pour ever made. So that's kind of, people think of a lot of concrete, they think of something like the Hoover Dam or something like that. Well, the foundation of this Getty was probably next to the Hoover Dam. This is one of the largest concrete pours ever made. That's interesting. Yeah, it is. When you come to this facility, you'll notice right away that it's on top of a mountain, Santa Monica Mountain. I mean, it's not a huge mountain; it's more like a hill, but it's up there. When you park your car to get to it, you have to park on the bottom of the hill, and you take a tram or a little, like a little people mover that takes you up to the top of the hill. And that's one of the first things you notice, that it's kind of strange that they would do that, but clearly they're trying to limit the ability for people to get too close or to get vehicles close to it, and that's a tactical, strategic thinking, I'm sure. Inside the building, everything is covered with travertine marble, or actually on the outside. It's about 4 inches, 6 inches thick, which in centimeters you can translate that for me, but it's about the width of your hand thick. And travertine is actually a fossilized marble, which is extremely hard. It's very similar to the ceramic ballistic armor that the soldiers wear or that they put inside of the armored cars. So essentially, the building is bulletproof. And if you look at it, you'll notice that the way it's built, it is like a fortress. It does have towers. It has gun emplacements. It has very difficult to access. The hillsides are very steep, and there's cameras everywhere. They have double cameras, and then they have cameras watching the cameras, and it's pretty secure. And not too far away from the Getty, there's a home on the hillside, just a little slightly below it. From what I understand, this is where all the CIA guys hang out, and they're the ones that provide the security for around the place at night. And they've got a flock of German shepherds that are trained in Yugoslavian, protecting the perimeter. But when you get into this thing, and I'll give you a little quick tour, basically. But when you get off the tram, they dump you out towards the right side of the tram, and then there's a big staircase that goes up towards the museum. Now, if you were to go around the front of the tram to the left, there is an area which is the entrance to the security section. And it's through this security door that you access the lower levels. And you can get in underneath that big giant concrete slab I was telling you about. But if you look at the entrance to the security, it's it's a walkway which is about maybe 10 meters long or so, and it's a very narrow path. And the path is lined with pillars that are covered with this tavertine, and you look at that and you think, well, if you were to try to assault this building and you were trying to gain access to this area, you'd have to go down this narrow path, and that's essentially, that is a kill zone. You probably would have a hard time getting down that pathway. Once you get into the security area, you'll notice that there's quite a bit going on under the facility there, and there's actually more art being stored under the darn thing than there is above it. So that's interesting.
Yeah, you're also talking about the blast doors, really, below that, and how that's actually laid out so that they could close it from the inside and just let the whole top go.
That's right. Yeah, if you go further down the thing, you'll pass the armory with all the machine guns. You'll pass quite a bit of work being done on art, and then you'll see this big nuclear blast door, which is monstrous, and you wonder what the heck is that all about. Ask the tour guide; they'll tell you. No, that's not a nuclear blast door. But anyway, this leads to an elevator. And the elevator, of course, is huge. You could drive a big monstrous truck onto this thing, and that's quite amazing. But the thing is that there's a lot of security. Like they've used like retina scans and palm readers and all of this sort of thing. So it's right out of James Bond. All the access to the various areas it's very highly secure. So you'd have a hard time getting down there for sure. And you can only imagine what they've got for protection.
Mm. Yeah, it's pretty incredible stuff, isn't it? I mean, it's a bit overkill for a few paintings.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is, when you see that kind of that kind of a strategic setup, you wonder, never mind how much they can protect, what exactly are they protecting? It's the real question.
Mm-hmm.
And why?
Well, that's where it kind of gets interesting, doesn't it? Because of the next bit, really.
Well, after the tour and seeing all of this blast door and the big elevator and needing to know where this went, we got a hold of a remote viewer to go down there and do some exploration. And that's where it got really crazy, and we got to see what was down there. And I'll tell you what the remote viewer reported back. But I have to say that the best affirmation that we had that this was true and that what the remote viewer had reported back to us was true was that these guys freaked out afterwards. Once the next day after we had penetrated their lower levels, they got very excited, and we thought for sure that they were going to put out a hit on us, but that didn't happen, and actually that caused them to be forced to even deal with us in even closer than they had been before. But real quick, when you go down the elevator, the thing goes down about a mile. Okay, it goes pretty far down there, and the first floor, the first level that you reach, when you're going down, is an area where they have psychics. And from what I was told, there was something like 200 psychics, and she actually said that these were Nazis that were doing this, and and I guess that the idea was that these guys were trying to prevent psychics or something from going down there and seeing anything, but that didn't work very well. But apparently the psychics were able to detect that somebody had penetrated, and that's how these guys knew that we had done this. Beyond that level, there is an area that they call the spa, and this is just like what you think it is. This is like a Roman bath, and it's incredibly luxurious. If you can think of Imperial Rome at the height of the Roman glory and opulence, that's exactly what you're going to see down there. Lots of gold, precious inlays, marble, and slaves. Lots of sex and wild things going on. Now, beyond that, you get into the living area, which is essentially like a big city. There is, there's a huge room in the center of this thing, and it's like a skyscraper that goes down many, many floors. And from this area, there are tunnels that radiate outwards like the spokes on a wheel. And they use these big tunnel boring machines, and this is where they build the living quarters and what have you. And if you go down farther, you get to where the tubes are, and there's the tube train. One of them goes to Edwards Air Force Base, and the other direction goes out to Santa Catalina Island, which is 23 miles off the coast. And from there, they have sub-pen and places where UFOs and that kind of thing, beam ships, can take off from underwater. So that's kind of an escape route for these guys. And then, of course, from Edwards, it goes on and connects to the rest of them, Denver, Area 51, et cetera, et cetera. And then below that, we get into the really dark, evil areas where they actually have their temples, where they do their satanic rituals. And that's not very pleasant, and some people get very, very upset when they come upon that sort of thing.
Yeah, and previous research we've done on the really, really deep underground military bases. There's some very dodgy-looking signs about the Satanism and stuff that's, the satanic situation going on down there. And in fact, it's plastered all over the walls, isn't it? Well, I know from previous research, deep underground military bases and that sort of thing. But, yeah, incredible stuff. So I'm just trying to think where we want to go with this, because there's so many different directions we can go in. Basically, you were talking about how Edward went across there and what occurred at that particular time. You want to say that?
Well, when the thing opened in 2000, roughly, Edward, or actually Andrew, that came out and visited us. And at the time, Queen Elizabeth had some Raphael pencil drawings that were on display at the Getty, and Andrew came out here to represent the Queen and view the drawings, and as well as take a look at the Getty and hand out a few awards or knightships. But what actually ended up happening was he came to Edwards Air Force Base first. And they said that this was because he was a pilot, he was in the military, and he was going to evaluate some of the aircraft. And I suspect, then, what I reported was that he probably went downstairs, got into their underground base over there, hooked up to the tube train, and took a ride into the Getty to probably cut a ribbon or inaugurate the new facility. And you have to remember, why is the royalty involved in this? And you have to understand that this is actually owned by the Crown. If you look at the Magna Carta, especially the version that was written for the nobles, you'll see that all of the different players back then, the Templars, the nobles, the Crown, the Vatican, et cetera, they all basically got together, said, we will play together, we will respect each other's belief systems and organizations, and we will give the Crown 20% of everything. And so when they opened up this new underground facility, which is essentially a modern castle, of course the Crown was the one to come there and cut the ribbon and inaugurate the new facility. And you got to understand that out of all the bases that are scattered all over the world, including the 250 or so that here in the United States, this one in particular has got to be the most lavish of all the bases ever built. And that's because, for one thing, they all have different purposes, and the purpose of this particular base is to preserve Western culture, and this is why they have such a big amount of artwork in storage and being protected, not just what's on display. And I suspect that the facilities underground are probably decorated with incredible artwork and lavish amounts of precious metals, etc. So yeah, I would very much expect that when the time comes, that's where the Crown is probably going to take refuge.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes perfect sense to me, especially with all of the background research that I've done previously. One of the interesting things you said in your speech as well, that about the surrounding houses of the rich and famous.
Oh, right. Yeah. Well, now this was a rumor that I had heard from other people, primarily involving the Skirball Center, which is I don't know exactly how you would classify it. I don't think it's a temple or anything, but I do know that they teach Kabbalah and some of the Hebrew mysticism and things like that over there, understand that they're hooked up. And then, there's quite a few wealthy people in the vicinity of that area naturally, and apparently these people have been given the opportunity to invest in this project, and they have essentially condos down below that are reserved for them, and they have their homes actually have a method for going downstairs and getting down there. So so if you've got $1 billion and you're willing to invest in this project, they'll set you up a little bunker, for your family.
Sounds like quite an exclusive club to say the least, doesn't it?
Yeah, do you know what's really funny about all this too? They talk about all the money that they're using to build this, and it's all money that's been stolen from the people, and here they are running to save their own tails again.
That's right.
What else is new? Nothing new under the sun, apparently. I did have one question that has come in so far with regards to Billy Meyer, and just wanted an insider's view on this. You've probably heard this before, but just wondering. The question is to ask you about the hoax story that was surrounding Billy Meyer. There's lots of info about that out there, but they'd like to hear an insider's view, someone that's actually been there.
No, I'm sorry. When you say somebody's actually been there, we're talking about the Getty now, or I'm
sorry. No. Billy Meyer. Just not. I wasn't trying to change the subject here. I just like to, when I get questions asked, when things are mentioned, I like to make sure that I jump all over them at least at some point in the show. Just with regards to your experiences with the Billy Meyer camp.
Okay. Well, I know we talked about this briefly last night, but, I had just gotten done being involved with the NSA and having a big falling out with them, and I was kind of afraid that they were going to come and get me. And I hooked up with a guy that was providing me with body armor, and this person was also involved with the Billy Meyer people, providing them with security also. And he put me in touch with them. This was after he had exposed me to all the Billy Meyer material, which was my first initiation into the entire UFO, alien issue. I hadn't really followed that stuff at all prior to that. He wanted me to, these people wanted me to serve them a couple of purposes. One, I was a technical background scientist type person, and they wanted me to give them some, help them with use my insight to help them with understanding the materials and some of the information that Billy was receiving. The other thing they wanted me to do was to assist them in providing security and tactics and devices that they could use to protect Billy and the other individuals that were dealing with him. And the other thing that they wanted me to do was to help them market the information, the VHS tapes, the books that they were producing, and all that. And I didn't have a problem with that, but I got to say that when you're dealing with something that's this important, a truth that you really want to get out there, it's distasteful. I found it distasteful that they were trying to cash in on this. And I understand people need to eat; it's a three-dimensional world and all that, but as soon as you start charging money for the information, it kind of taints the value of the information a little bit. So that was something I had to deal with.
Yeah. Again, anytime, and that's a quandary that all of us that are trying to get this information out there, we're always caught in this quandary, in that we make everything freely available to the point where it's effectively crippled us. Hoping that what we're giving out has some sort of value and that people are interested enough to help us. And then when you actually start asking for anything, all of a sudden it becomes a vested interest. And, the easy answer, Stephen, and Peter and Tony, myself, the easy answer for us is, okay, well, we'll just shut up and we'll just keep it to ourselves. And you see, it's a catch-22. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. So bottom line is we just keep doing what we do. And I do want to put this out a couple times during the show, that Stephen does have a book available, and you can go to lulu.com, that's LULU.com, and you can find ways of ordering it. You can get it online or in a hardback or a physical version is probably the best way to put it. So I do want to get that out there. So for anyone that's looking for Stephen's book that has all sorts of this information in it, it is there and available, and actually might help put some food on his table as well.
Yeah, well, I'm not trying to get rich off this thing, you
No,
guys.
no.
We want to get that information out there for sure.
No, I think that people listening, Stephen, prefer to have their truth preachers starving and in destitution in order to show that we do not have a vested interest in the truth. We don't. We just want truth. So a little light sarcastic humor. Well,
I'm not starving, but I don't have the big house and all the cars and everything that I used to have. So yeah, it's for me. This is poverty. Yeah. So.
Yeah, it is. I got to tell you, it's certainly a lot lower standard of living than I'm certainly used to. I was in a tent for a couple of months there. That was fun.
Wow.
And yeah, it's great. But hey, we're still here. We're in the fight. And yeah, screw them if they can't take a joke. I'm good. I'll keep going as long as I can. So if I ever go silent, well, it ain't my fault. Sorry.
Well, when you're developing your psychic skill, I got to tell you, being humble and controlling your ego and letting go of all those things that anchor you down, it really does help. And if you want to be, you want to devote your life to serving others, and you want to become a master psychic or a healer and all that sort of thing. It comes with the territory. It's just one of those things you need to embrace. But it's not the end of the world, because the universe will take care of you. People will come out and help you and feed you and give you what you need. You may not get what you want, but you get what you need, right?
Oh, totally. And I love the way you just put that there, and it's a beautiful way to describe it. What we have traded away for in terms of material wealth, we are gaining in spiritual and psychic wealth. And I much prefer those gifts.
True. So what else do you guys want to talk about?
I want to talk about scalar waves.
Scalar waves. All right, hey, we can do that. You guys ready for that? Scalar waves?
Oh, please. You know what? We have a very. I'm not saying that we don't have we have an extremely educated, very knowledgeable, very awake audience that listens to us. But not everybody has been into things like scalar waves and the Tesla technologies, and that whole genre. Kozarev and all the rest of these guys that brought a lot of this stuff to the table. Russellians, you name it, it's all there. So if you could kind of come in at a very, very shallow angle, and then we'll do the dive bomb.
Oh, all right. Okay, but basically we can start with Nikola Tesla. He's the guy that came up with this scalar waves, that identified it. And it helps if you understand, first of all, the electromagnetic spectrum. Okay, if you look at all of the energy, like the light, the rainbow, electricity, heat, microwaves, X-rays, cosmic, alpha particles, all this sort of gamma rays, everything, it's all on the electromagnetic spectrum somewhere. And the spectrum goes down to 0 and up to infinity. And if you were to look at, say, the rainbow, the rainbow is red is the small numbers, or no, actually red is the big numbers, and the violet are the small numbers. Violet is like 400, and red is 800. Now, the scalar waves is a different type of energy that's actually comes from a reality level that's actually higher than the one we're on now. We're on a third density level. It's actually from a fourth density level. But if you look at a waveform, what is a wave? A wave is a sine wave. It's a little curlicue that starts at 0, it goes up, it goes down through the center, hits the bottom, it goes back up again. It's kind of like an S laying on its side. Okay, we all know what a sine wave looks like. Got to get that over first.
Oh yeah. For all those, I'll give a quick comparison for those wondering. Just think of what Santo has done on his presentations, presenting the sine wave. Which is the S lying on its side. So it all ties together.
Right. Okay, now a scalar wave is basically the same thing, except what it does is it's actually two waves that are perpendicular to each other. They're off 90 degrees. They're at a different polarity, like an XY polarity. They are identical waves, but like one would go up and down, the other one would go sideways. And what happens is that the peaks of these corresponding waves will create a zone, and it's in that zone where the scalar energy is found. Now, another good way of looking at the way a scalar energy works is that if you understand that energy travels in a vortex spiral, very much like a corkscrew. Now, if you think of a tornado, which is a standard vortex energy, and if this tornado passes over a body of water, the swirling air of the tornado will actually suck up the water and create a funnel tube of water. Now, the scalar energy works the same way. When the electromagnetic energy is traveling in a vortex or a tornado type shape, it sucks up the scalar energy the same way that the air sucks up the water to form a water spout.
Yeah, that's a great way to describe it.
So, now I know that you had read through Constantine Mail a little bit.
Yep.
Yeah, yep. Actually, I'm going to give out a website for people that if they want to get more research on Constantine Mail, you can go to www.mail, that's MEYL.EU. So that should get you where you need to be if you want to do a bit more research into Constantine Mail. So there you go. Are we good?
Yeah. Cool. Have you got any more on that, Steve? Mm-hmm.
I think Steve might be muted. He might have muted himself.
All right. Okay.
He's still here, so on the board, so nothing's happened that way.
Okay. That only leaves a couple of options, doesn't it?
Yeah, Stephen, are you there?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now we can hear you. There you are.
I just had a cat chewing on the wire to my microphone, so if that's I'm about ready to throw a cat against the wall here.
Something like that.
How am I sounding? Is this gone completely all to heck or what?
No, you sound great.
Okay.
All good.
Well, I'm having problems.
Can you hear us okay?
Oh my God. I can hardly hear you guys, and I don't know if you can hear me or not.
We can hear you fine.
Loud and clear.
I'm gonna pro kitty indeed, Karina. Let me get down to his Skype. We can hear you fine.
Well, you guys, I'm afraid I can't hear you very good, so I don't know what happened.
Weird. Okay. Well, we just keep. I guess we can just keep playing. Oh, you gotta love when they get away, huh? Looks like they sent undercover cat their business to me.
We're having some terrible feedback, you guys.
Is that any better?
Yeah, not too bad. I don't know what's going on. I'm sorry. I'm totally losing you on this end.
Okay, you sound great on this end. We can hear you fine.
Well, I can certainly talk. I just can't hear you guys too well. So go ahead, and if you have any questions, let me know, and I'll respond.
Yeah, I wanted to hear a little bit more about the caves and the cavers, because that's part of the title of your book. If you could just give us a bit on that, Steve.
Tony, that did not come through too well. Maybe somebody could repeat that for him.
Cavers? Yeah, Tony wanted you to talk about the cavers.
Oh my God, cavers! I think you're asking me about cavers. Where's that name come from? I apologize again. I'm not hearing you too well, but I'll just say real quick that one of my handlers actually came up with that name, and he was the one that was kind of initially got me thinking about these underground bases, and he referred to these people as cavers. Now, he's actually dead now. They gave him a heart attack, but he may have said too much, and that could be why he's not around now. So I dedicate that to Vince.
Okay. Can you hear us, Steve?
Did that help out, you guys?
Yeah.
I'm thinking this may be on your end.
No, everything's great here. Unplug your headphones. See if you're...
Okay, well, when I unplug the headphones, I'm still getting the really bad feedback on the main speaker here. So I don't know if that's the solution.
Maybe what I'm thinking that maybe if you want to duck out of the call and then come back again to see if we get a better connection.
Well, I wish you guys could hear what I could hear.
Just hear it. That's madness.
Yeah, that's happening from your end, Kate. I can hear this really bad feedback as well.
I haven't done anything here.
Okay, well, you see, 1 minute it's fine, the next minute it goes terrible.
Typical show, huh?
You know, I wouldn't be surprised if we're having problems because somebody doesn't like what we're talking about.
Yeah.
That's normal for us. We're used to it.
Well, we're getting into some really sensitive stuff here, so this shouldn't be a surprise at all that they're trying to shut us down.
Absolutely.
Big smiles from everyone. Actually, Peter, we got you here. I just want to, if you can do a quick check-in on your phone line to see how that sounds.
How's it sound now?
Yeah, you're great.
All right.
Yeah. So,
well,
go ahead.
Guys, under the circumstances, do you want to try to run with it as best you can, and then I can try to come back on a different another day, and we could pick up where we left off?
You're coming through clear as a bell, Stephen. I don't know if you can hear me or not.
No, yeah, Tony, I can hear you, but it's just not coming through in a legible way. I can't understand what you're saying.
Okay, I'll type.
We want to keep you on the air, Steve. There's a lot of stuff. We want you doing most of the talking tonight.
Well, I can appreciate that. We're only 36 minutes into the show. This is not good, but darn if this isn't frustrating. I don't think I can blame this on the cat.
No. This is normal. Welcome to our shows. I think they have a beat on us every Wednesday and Friday night.
Well, you know what you can do if you want. You can type out questions on Skype, and I can respond to you there if you'd like.
I've done it, Steve. Done it, mate. Check
so
Skype.
Yeah. Just go ahead and Skype me a quick question or something, and I'll run with it.
And in the meantime, go ahead.
I got you up here, Tony. If you can do that, or I see you typing now. Great. Sorry about this, guys. More on beam ships. Oh yeah, that sounds like fun.
Yeah, let's talk about beam ships.
Yeah. I got very heavily involved with silver, and the reason was because I was actually making jewelry for Neiman Marcus. I made, quite a bit of this jewelry. A couple $100,000 worth of this jewelry, and because of these processes that I was using with the silver, and because of my exposure to Billy Meyer and the fact that the material that was given to him was actually fine silver, and I was able to build some theories about how these things were actually built. But one of the things that I learned from working with silver, fine silver, in the plating situation was that of all the materials out there, especially in the non-ferrous metals, silver is the one ingredient or the one material that can be built with the highest level of resolution. So in other words, you could take silver molecules and you could stack these things up in a row or stack them up, and you could build very, very complex structures molecule by molecule using silver. Nothing else will work like this. Platinum, copper, whatever, the various different other metals that you would use can't do this. The other thing is that semiconductor lasers are very, very tiny. The actual media that produces the light, the photon energy, is a tiny, tiny little microscopic layer of material. So I suspect that in these beam ships, they could scatter tiny, tiny pieces of semiconductor laser material throughout the ship, and they could, they could probably turn the entire beam ship into one giant laser. Now, when I talk about, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but the if you look at the way we make computer chips, it's essentially what we do is we take a wafer of silicon, which is about 6 inches in diameter, not too big, and we evaporate layers of material onto it, and then we etch the material, and we do this multiple times, so many, many layers of this material are built up, and usually these layers are only so many molecules thick. They're very, very, very thin, and then they'll take this wafer, and then they'll slice it up into little tiny little chips, and that's what is actually the computer. Now, if you think of the complexity of this chip, this little tiny wafer, or this chip that's going into the semiconductors that allows, say, like in your microprocessor unit, it's a very, very tiny chip. Now, what if we were able to have a chip-making ability that had, say, 1,000 times more detail? The microscopic detail went down to the level of the molecule, which is far beyond what we can do today. Nowadays, we're limited by the wavelength of light that we use to expose it. And now, what if we were to take this structure, and instead of having a little tiny chip or a wafer, 6-inch wafer, what if we had this wafer was actually 21 feet in diameter, or the same diameter as one of these beam ships? And what if instead of building it up only so many atomic layers thick, what if we built this thing up billions and billions of layers thick to where it was, say, 10 feet high, or taller than a human? So if you look at the dimensions of a beam ship, which is roughly 21-foot diameter and 7, 10, 8 foot high, relatively small craft, this is the same technology that goes into making that, is the same thing as making a computer chip, only on a very, very massive scale with a level of detail and resolution far beyond what we were capable of today. And from what I've learned from the Billy Meyer people and all that, is that it actually takes them something like 250 years to produce one of these things, just because the billions of layers of evaporation or material that they're building this thing up by, it just takes so darn long to do. This is very similar to a manufacturing process that we call rapid prototyping. I'm sure you guys, you've got some engineering background. You've heard about rapid prototyping. Yeah.
Yep.
But it's very similar. Only instead of having one material like silver, there's going to be a lot of other materials scattered about the same way we would have on a semiconductor, different layers and different electrical properties. Now, so from a manufacturing standpoint, the silver is the way to go. Another thing about the silver that is significant, and this is something that I was exposed to in the later years of my business. I was working with the University of Colorado, and they had a project where they wanted me to put a heavy layer of fine silver on a copper substrate. And what they would do with this is they would take this silver-plated copper substrate, they would put it inside of a magnetic field, and then they would expose it to a plasma. And a plasma is like an arc of electricity that's being compressed magnetically, and this plasma would irradiate the silver and cause it to actually emit ultraviolet light. So the silver is actually becoming a lasing media, just like the semiconductor lasers, and what's happening is that it degrades one atomic layer at a time and produces photons. So this is kind of like a atomic reaction where you're taking matter and converting it into energy. But the thing is the light that comes off of this silver, it comes out perpendicular to the surface of the silver. So what that means is the light is coherent. Otherwise, you would say that it is a massive ultraviolet laser. So if you had a disk 21 feet in diameter and the entire surface of this disk was emitting a coherent UV laser light, that would be like standing on a fire hose. It would actually push you up to the speed of light. So to me, this makes a lot of sense. If you're trying to get something up to the speed of light, you're going to push it with light.
Yeah, that's interesting that you mentioned the violet glow on it. Lots of reports of that violet essence around around, different sightings that people have seen, different descriptions of what has gone on, and I mean, they put it right in your face in Hollywood anyway, right? But they do. They just shove it here's some truth. We'll call it science fiction, though, and we'll see if you won't buy it, because you won't, because it's just a movie, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, you know what I mean. So it's,
when I was writing my book, it's funny because so many people out there that I thought were friends and book coaches and stuff, they all said, "Oh, you gotta write this like a fiction. You can't say this is real. They're gonna think you're crazy." And I'm like, "What?" Or write it in third person, and and all this. And it's like, well, why was everybody trying to protect me and try to get this released as a fiction when it's my life story? There's nothing fiction about it.
So that's the way they do it. They have to present it into fiction, and that way they can brush it off and say, "Oh, it's only science fiction."
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty bad.
One of the protocols, and I noticed you mentioned those earlier, and those are in the book as well. Interesting stuff.
Well, the thing is about the protocols, and again, that's a very inflammatory thing, and we don't like to even talk about it in public. But if you do read it, you'll notice that it is a pretty much play-by-play for the last 100 years. Everything they say has come to pass one way or another. But one of the things that really got me was a chapter 10 or chapter 9, chapter 10, in verse 10 or verse 8 or whatever it is. But essentially, it deals with the issue of the undergrounds, and they call them the metropolitans. And in my book, when I talk about the undergrounds, I actually refer to them as the metropolitans, and that's in respect to that. But when I came across this particular chapter in the protocols where they talk about the undergrounds and them blowing them up should anybody ever try to raid these things, I sent an email off to one of my handlers, the guy Vince that I was talking about earlier that came up with the name Cavers. And I didn't really say anything to him. I just sent him this email, and in the email I had this quote from the protocols, and I asked him, what do you make of this? And I didn't give him any explanation. I didn't tell him where this information came from, but he knew immediately what it was, where it came from, and what it was referring to. And he came back to me very agitated, and his response to me is, "We're not all Jews. We're Nazis too. See, there's Nazis. We're half Jews and we're half Nazis. So it's not just all about the Jews." And when I say Jews, I don't really mean Hebrews, Israelites, and all that per se, but the hardcore Zionist types. And because I had kind of felt that this whole business with these undergrounds and this world government stuff was kind of a Zionist type of thing. And then I went on to realize after Vince had enlightened me that, there are two sides to this coin, and one side is real live German Nazis. And this goes back to the war. It goes back to Project Paperclip, when the U.S. government brought hundreds of these people into the country and essentially disbanded the OSS and started up the CIA. And people like to think that the CIA is actually just a modern version of the OSS. No, it's not. The CIA was staffed almost entirely with Project Paperclip Nazis. So our CIA has a very, very deep Nazi tradition.
Just on that note as well, I'd like to add that also NASA was also staffed with the same individuals. And
naturally, yeah. Werner von Braun, of course, everybody knows that.
Yeah, exactly. Never a straight answer either.
Yeah, exactly. And something else too, and one of the things I like to convey, I want to bounce this off you as well, Stephen. A lot of the times you'll hear, you never know what to believe, right? When you hear Werner von Braun coming out with all the different levels that are going to happen, it's Cold War, and then then he starts talking about an alien hoax, right? So,
well, we can definitely talk about this alien hoax, and I think Werner von Braun is probably a good one to talk about that, because the alien hoax will come from the Germans, the Nazis. Now, when these guys set up their base in New Schwabenland over there in Antarctica, they had they had all of their UFOs that they were flying around, and they supposedly had found a underground passage or an under the ice passage into the center of the Earth, and the Agartha, Shambhala, and all that. That is a big deal. People, that's one of the biggest things and the hardest things to accept is that, yeah, the Earth is hollow. It's like a big geode. There are entities that have been living in there since beyond our current epoch, and that these Nazis had actually been able to go down there and link up with these entities and establish a new country, actually, within the bowels of the Earth. And it's something that should be pointed out. I mean, this is a big issue into itself, and that is that you do not do interplanetary travel. You do not get that sophisticated technology-wise without also growing up philosophically and spiritually. So the point is that, again, when we start looking at all these realities and we start understanding these complex concepts, we have to stop using labels, good and evil and this, and that's what I've got to say. I mean, to me personally, I think the Nazis are still Nazis. However, because of their contact with extraterrestrials, because of their contact with the people that are living within the side of the Earth, and because of their ability to travel to different planets and stuff with their technology, they have become quite a bit more spiritually advanced than they were back in the dark days of World War II. So they're not the same people per se, but by the same token, we should understand also that the USA and Russia are actually very close allies. It's nothing like what they portray the situation to be. And in reality, the true enemy of these two superpowers is actually the Germans that went to New Schwabenland and have established themselves in the center of the Earth. So when we talk about alien hoaxes, and this is what the U.S. and the Russians are expecting is going to happen, is we're actually going to see blonde Nordic types that are going to be flying in on man-made craft that right out of Antarctica, New Schwabenland, and they're going to try to pass themselves off as Pleiadians. And the problem is that the thing is, Pleiadians are human. They do look like us. They are Nordic-looking, blonde, blue eyes, tall, attractive, and all that. And so it's going to be really hard to tell the difference between these two. Now, if you had to look at them, one of the best ways to tell the difference is that a beam ship that the Germans are going to be flying is not going to be made out of solid silver like the ones that the Pleiadians will be flying around in. They're going to be made out of sheet metal and manufacturing techniques that are a little more realistic, a little more earthly. So that's one way to tell. And if you want to learn about that, you really need to study up on Victor Schauberger and his implosion technology and all that.
Again, torsion physics, etc.
Yeah.
Totally. There's a couple of different things I could go to there, but one of the things I really wanted to go to was what your Templar contact might have said to you and might not have. Pardon me. Because one of the things that I'm aware of is that apart from, there's lots of things that I'm aware of with regards to the Templars, but one of the things that I do know is that Hitler actually made contact with the Giza intelligence. And I wonder if you could comment on some of that.
Sure. Well, as you know, there were actually two groups, metaphysical groups, and I have a hard time sometimes remembering their names. But one was, I believe, the Vril group, and I'm not exactly familiar. I can't really remember the other. But the thing is that there were two groups that were working on this metaphysical spiritual development and working to communicate with extraterrestrials and whatnot. And one of the groups was a little more of a service to others, benevolent organization, while the other one was a little more of a dark service to self, more of a Nazi thing. So this is kind of important, and it would really help if I had these names on the top of my head right now. But they weren't all evil. yes, they were making contact with the Pleiadians, and I know that some of the women that they had dealing with these groups, you'll see a lot of pictures of them standing in front of craft, UFO type craft, and the women all have very, very long hair. They've got this long straight hair that goes down to their, all the way down their backs. And this is kind of interesting, but the reason why they did this was because they felt that the long hair actually acted as like an antenna and helped them to receive messages and downloads.
Absolutely.
That's same with native cultures, and again, that is physical antennae. Look at the keratin content of the hair, and keratin content is the highest in blonde.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You're
right. The Native Americans, that's a good example. When the Army was recruiting the Indians to become scouts, the first thing they did was they gave them an Army haircut, and then suddenly these scouts lost all their abilities. So they finally realized, you got to let these guys keep their long hair, and they could do all these things that they needed them for.
Yeah, they even changed the Army manual to make sure that they never got their hair cut, and it was one of the very few rules that were made to, actually be in favor with the natives. Go figure. Oh, we can use it, so okay, they can keep it as long as we can use it. Typical. You know what I mean?
Right.
A couple of other things I want to point on as well. If we actually, just for one example, yes, the Vril Society were involved, so were the Teutonic Knights. Mm-hmm. Basically, I'm not sure if you're aware of Adolf Hitler's moon program.
I'm sorry, what was that? His what now?
His moon program. He had a program basically sending the Hanabu craft to basically the moon.
Yeah, I did hear that they did send a larger craft to Mars, but it was a one-way trip. So there was some brave individuals that volunteered for that one. Okay.
Yeah, I've just heard various bits and pieces about it. I'm just trying to put those across and see what comes back. But
well, I do believe that the Nazis have a very strong presence on the moon and Mars now. And from what I understand, the U.S. and the Russians operate a space station similar to the space station orbiting Earth right now. That's actually orbiting Mars.
Yeah, absolutely. There's much more to this than that. But I actually know somebody who was, personally, I've met them and discussed things with them. That was actually trained in the 1950s, and he was at SAS, and he was trained by a Nordic. And, there's a lot more information behind all this, but anyway, that's just another aspect of somebody who's been involved with these, and he's a super soldier, John.
Right.
It's interesting stuff. So, again, some other aspects of this, the Nazi bell. Can you give us a quick update on the Nazi bell, or brief, if you know?
I'm sorry, update on what was that?
The Nazi bell.
Nazi bell
program. Yeah.
That was another type of. If I understand you correctly, that was another type of craft. When you talk about bells, it reminds me of the Vimnas that the ancient Hindus were flying. But if I'm not mistaken, this was something that Victor Schauberger had developed.
Yeah, he was involved with the development of that. Can you hear me any better, Stephen?
Actually, Tony, I can hear you pretty good right now.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, the Nazi bell was one of the precursors to the space program, and all about spinning ferrofluids and creating the electromagnetic forces around the craft. But I just wondered if you had any information on that bell program itself initially.
Well, I've studied the Schauberger stuff pretty extensively, and I know that the Russians have picked up on that quite a bit, and it's really quite simple when you look at it. And I know that Townsend Brown over here in the U.S. has also come up with similar techniques, but if you look at what they're doing, it's really very simple. It's essentially creating a capacitor with the plus side on the top and the minus side on the bottom. And I know that that we actually have craft here in the U.S. like the stealth bomber, which is using ion drive technology, and they're essentially using positive ions on the surface of the wing, which creates like a vacuum, which pulls the craft into the vacuum, and then they're putting negative ions into the exhaust, the jet exhaust, and that pushes. So yeah, they like to say that those stealth bombers take 12, 20 hours, something like this, to do a bombing mission, but I think they're actually flying quite a bit faster than that, and that's definitely classified.
Exactly. I mean, this is called electrogravitics. And what they actually did, as you said, a positive charge at the front of the wing, a negative at the back, creating a gravity well in front of the aircraft, so that the aircraft is constantly falling into the gravity well, thus reducing fuel consumption by at least 60% and increasing velocity. So yeah, fascinating stuff. Yeah, okay. So one of the things that I wanted to look at as well was the Holy Grail, the Ark of the Covenant, and Spear of Destiny that Hitler was also looking at.
Right.
What do you know about those, please?
Well, before I got involved with the Templars, I didn't really know too much of the history of the Templars, and obviously after I got exposed to them, I had to go back and read everything I could get my hands on. I want to talk about the Holy Grail first before I get into the Spear of Destiny. But the Holy Grail was, this is like that Da Vinci Code thing. People think that the Holy Grail is a cup, a chalice that Christ used at the Last Supper, but that's not true at all. The Holy Grail is the Sangre Real, or the royal bloodline. And this is what the Templars were really doing, is that they went into the Holy Land during the Crusades, and they actually camped out in the area that would have been the stables of King Herod's castle, and they did an archaeological dig. They said, "Well, yeah, we're very humble and pious. We don't want to stay in the castle. We'll be plenty happy enough in the stables here." But the reason why they did that was that they were able to clandestinely dig into the underground areas there and locate the ancient archives for King Herod. And what they were looking for was the census records, and they wanted to find Mary Magdalene, and they wanted to see if she had children and where these children were. So yeah, they've been spending hundreds of years trying to track down and locate the alleged descendants of Jesus Christ. So obviously I was raised Catholic. Christian. I don't really, we're taught to believe that Christ was not married and Christ did not have children. However, these Templars are very much believing that Christ did indeed have children and descendants that are plentiful and walking the earth today. And their job is to go out and locate these individuals and keep an eye on them and keep track of what they're doing and try to have some sort of control over these people. So, needless to say, when I start having Templars following me around and intervening in my life and protecting me from people that would cause harm, I have to wonder if there's some sort of a royal bloodline thing there or not. But the other thing is, though, as far as royal bloodlines are concerned, is that allegedly the Templars split up. There was a faction A and a faction B, and this may have happened more than once throughout history, but from what I understand, when Hitler was in power, a large portion of these Templars, who were, European blue blood aristocracy types, they went underground, and a lot of them came here to the U.S. and assumed different names, different identities, told people that they were Polish instead of German, this kind of thing, and disappeared. So it is possible that these Templars are also trying to locate these members of this other faction. And the other possibility is that this goes all the way back to many, many epochs back into the past, to as far back as the Lyrians, when they came here and allegedly brought the violet flame of life and caused the life on the earth as we know it today. So those are three possibilities.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. I'm just thinking very carefully about what I say next. Okay, well, just one other take on the Holy Grail, or one of the Holy Grails for you. I believe after the studying I've done, there are several Holy Grails. One of them would be the keystone to the pyramids, which actually is a tetrahedron Merkaba, basically, that located on the top of the actual pyramid itself, and allowed the pyramid to resonate backwards and forwards with the energy to the Sirius star system and various other star systems. And the way I understand that is it's non-linear energy flow between the stars, in the same way as molecules have molecular bonds to each other. The stars have molecular bonds to each other as well. And this is one of the things that the pyramids were focused on, like lenses, into the night sky to help anchor those molecular bonds. Does that make any sense from this perspective?
Well, that is an interesting point. I mean, if you consider that we all came from Source, then naturally we all have that connection. And it's kind of like humans, when a human has a physical connection with another human, we tend to build a psychic bond that never really goes away. So yeah, I would suspect that the stars and the planets have similar attributes. But one thing I want to say about the pyramids, and this also is related to crystals, quartz crystals, as well as obelisks. But from one of the things that I learned about the pyramids is they actually act as like an orgone device. They are actually attracting energy from the cosmos. In this case, I would say probably scalar energy, and feeding it into the Earth. Now, an orgone device uses a principle that is called the law of dissimilar materials, and that means that if you have multiple layers of organic and non-organic material, it will actually cause ions or electrons to actually pass through. The same way a battery works. We have a battery. We'll have layers of zinc and copper within an electrolyte solution. And it's these layers of material that causes these electrons to actually start moving in one direction. And this is a very important principle because we see it many times in electronics as well as esoteric devices. Capacitor works the same way. Battery, as I mentioned, works the same way. The Ark of the Covenant worked the same way. The Ark of the Covenant was essentially a wooden box with a gold layer on the inside and a gold layer on the outside. That worked the same way. It caused the energy it would actually absorb the energy. If you look at a quartz crystal has that nice little point on the end, and the point is actually works like a prism to focus energy in towards the center, like a columnating lens. So, and if you look at an obelisk, say like the Washington Monument, or one of the obelisks that they have at the Vatican, or say in London, they do the same thing. They attract energy like an antenna, and the point actually acts as a focusing optics, which runs the energy down into the Earth. So, the same way an orgone device would absorb energy and feed it into a crystal on the inside and funnel out cleansed or filtered energy, a pyramid would do the same thing, would actually absorb cosmic energy and feed it into the Earth and energize the surrounding area. Now, I know that Atlantis did the same thing. When Atlantis was in roughly the Atlantic Ocean, and they had these big giant crystal pyramids that we can still see underwater, one off of Long Island, New York, one in the Bermuda Triangle area, and then there's probably one off the UK, and then one down there somewhere by Africa. And so these pyramids actually were sucking in the cosmic energy and feeding the surrounding area that would have been where Atlantis was located.
Yeah, totally. The thing that I get off this as well, I mean, if you imagine that the Merkaba symbol is a triangle pointing upwards, which obviously denotes energy out, and also the triangle pointing downwards, which obviously denotes energy down. So what we've actually got is a bit like the moon pulling on the tide. As the moon pulls, the tide moves away. As the moon
I got to add something to that, Tony.
Yep.
I feel very strongly about the activating Merkaba, and I'm gonna tell you why. But when you look at the triangle and those symbols, the triangle pointed down is the female sign. That is the female. and the triangle pointed upwards, that is the male symbol. And if you look at like a military symbols, you'll see the chevrons that the soldiers wear on their shoulders, their stripes. These are pointed upward pointing triangles. Those designate that male energy, like a spear point. And that of course is the same as with your Masonic, with your compass and square. Now the thing about activating your Merkaba is that, and this is important, is that energy needs to be balanced. You need to have an equal amount of male and female flow going through your body. Female energy goes upwards and male energy goes downwards. Okay, the female energy comes from the earth and passes up through your base chakra and emits up through your crown chakra. Your male energy comes from the cosmos, goes down through your crown chakra and out through your root chakra. And these really need to be equal amounts. Now, when somebody activates their Merkaba, what they are actually doing is they're turning on their female energy 100%. Okay, they're pulling energy out of the earth, and they're emitting massive amounts of energy upward out through their head and into the atmosphere around them. And what happens is your field, your energy field around you, your aura, or your magnetic field gets really, really large. And this also tends, I know when people do these exercises and they activate their Merkabas, they tend to see a lot of black helicopters popping up out of nowhere all of a sudden. And this is because they're emitting this huge amount of energy into the fourth density. This is scalar energy. And I'm sure there are some benefits to doing this, but I would recommend people to not do that because you don't want to be 100% flowing in one direction or the other. You need to have both ways. And I'll say one thing about, and I don't want to say one energy is bad and one energy is good or one is more negative, but female energy can have some negative attributes. And if you think about PMS, when a woman is having way too much estrogen in her body and she's becoming very grumpy. The same thing happens to a man when he doesn't have enough masculine energy and he's got too much estrogen in his body. We get what we call angry male syndrome. So it's very important to keep these things balanced. Also, Reiki energy, the healing energy that we use when we are trying to work on somebody and heal them, we're not using earth energy, we're using male energy. Reiki energy comes from above. And this isn't just Reiki, this is also the Hindus. They have their method they call pranic healing. They are also receiving the energy from above. Now, a lot of your native peoples, their shamanic healing, they tend to use the female energy. But so you've really got to be careful when you look at these practices, and you've got to be careful not to do anything that's going to upset the balance of male and female energy.
No, I completely agree. What I was actually referring to was the keystone for the pyramid. Mm-hmm. How the shape of the pyramid has a geometry to it, and the geometry is there for a reason. Mm-hmm. And the direction, if you imagine how the pyramids were laid out on the ley lines of the earth, in other words, they were laid a longer ley line, and they were reflecting the stars above. So what I was talking about was the geometric pattern of the Merkaba, not necessarily our own Merkabas, which, yes, indeed we have. But I was talking about reactivating the pyramids and bringing back that energy that has been decapitated, basically. Mm-hmm. But no, it's all very good stuff that you mentioned there, and it's very accurate.
Well, one thing, though, about the pyramids, and this is with respect to this whole business of them being a giant orgone device, and that is that the limestone layer on the outside surface needs to be replaced because this was the dissimilar material. The base material on the inside, the stones that they used had a certain charge, and then the stone that they had on the outside surface that was encasing everything had a different type of charge. So for this thing ever to get working 100% like it was back in the old days, they would need to replace that exterior limestone.
Absolutely, insulation. And that comes back to the crystals that you mentioned earlier. We look at crystals, we've got radio sets that were quartz crystals. We've got piezoelectricity, how you compress a quartz crystal and then let it go. All of a sudden it emits a spark. And it's the same sort of thing going on inside the pyramids. And yes, the insulating cover was the insulator.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they used to be that you could buy these little piezoelectric devices that were like a little health aid, and you would take this thing and you would put it on a pressure point or an acupuncture point, and you would push a button, and it would shoot a little piezoelectric spark into your body. And the FDA over here, the Food and Drug Administration, went nuts, and they went after these things with a vengeance. And they didn't just take them all off the market. They went out of their way to locate every single one of them and destroy them. You got to wonder, anytime the FDA gets that excited about something, you got to wonder, what is it that they're trying to hide? They did the same thing with Wilhelm Reich, with all of his orgone boxes and orgone collectors and all of that technology. They threw his butt in jail, and where he died, and they collected up all of his devices and all of his books and everything he wrote, and they had a big bonfire. And you think, when we think of people burning books, we think, oh, that's something the Nazis did. Well, we did it here too. So
absolutely,
we're not so good.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. We were talking about bonfires there, Peter.
I know. I didn't want to even step in.
There you go. There's your intro.
Bonfires.
Light it up for a couple of minutes. We need you to get some steam. I can feel you from here.
Yeah. We talk about bonfires. It's all about the bonds, and we've been covering that ad infinitum for about the last 3 months, and really uncovering a whole plethora of excellent stuff. What our folks down in the court system like to do, because everything has to do with bonds. They're using your res, your electromagnetic flow, as far as your body, your energy, and they've captured it all on paper, and that's what they do behind closed doors. And I'm presently working on, I haven't let the cat out of the bag yet. I'm in overload mode as far as putting the information together to make these issues very apparent to the other side of the fence, that we know exactly what they do, and they're caught with their hands in the cookie jars as far as this whole system that they've created of fiat. And most of the people that are on these calls regular have a pretty good concept of what they're doing behind closed doors. And now I'm going to make sure that we know what's going on behind closed doors, and we're going to get a little bit more clarity, and we're going to start putting things in different boxes. That's matter of fact, just uncovered just recently in the last 5 days, further references to the box, not just putting a sin in the box, which removes it from the page. It's called the Circle of Eights and the Circle of Fours in their system, and it all has to deal with tontine policies and insurance, because every bond is underwritten by insurance. But the problem is, for those folks who get drafted for performance in court, they actually they aren't providing their skin in the game, their bond, to bond the case to move forward. So, in essence, they've literally committed a fraud, and they're actually using the energy from your bonds because you weren't aware who they were bringing forward. And this is the stuff they don't want us talking about, don't want us to know about. But a little late now, and when people talk about bonfires like you did, brother, you really opened up Pandora's box.
Yeah.
It's funny how everything operates in a box, and we've literally uncovered. I had a Navy brother that I was who shared with me how he put his document in a box in red, and I guess the captain understood what that box meant because he was off that ship within 24 hours after putting forth his document. So apparently there's power. Matter of fact, I was looking for and researching under Google for the box about anything having to do with a box, and they wouldn't put it in an obvious spot, but it actually is sort of obvious because the whole system, since it's a limited liability corporation, operates in literally everything's insured. Everything's underwritten by insurance, the derivatives, the whole market, the bond market, the birth certificate bonds. Everything starts with the bond, and they're claiming the energy, and they've captured it on paper. So we're going to take this in a direction they're going to enjoy. And it's ironic that after further research over the last few days that the red box does have intent. It does have power behind it. Because
that's what I want. What I want to bring forth here. Actually, Peter, you've nailed 3 or 4 things. I'm going to pull them across the board that are going to bring some clarity. Steve, when you're talking about energies, okay, this is, I've been saying this for a long time, that the legal world mimics the natural world in terms of energy. You know how they talk about circuit courts and putting people in cells and all the rest of it, okay? So what I'm gonna try to pull these both together, because I'm glad I got both you guys here. Now, when we're dealing with energy, in the fields of energy, what does red represent to you, Stephen?
Well, do me a favor, Tony. Could you repeat that, because I think you're the only one I'm really hearing well right now. So could you give that paraphrase his question again for me, real quick?
Yeah, sure. We're delving into an area here I'm not, well, I'm pretty sure you're not familiar with, but what Peter's asking is, what do you know about the color red and the association to energy?
Well,
briefly.
I gotta stop you real quick, because it looks like we are having some problems again with this connection. Could you?
Yeah, go figure.
Type that to me, Tony. Could you type that to me real quick?
In the meantime, I'm hoping that the listeners can hear us. I'm going to check with the people in the Skype room. Can you guys hear me okay?
Sounds good.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, see what happens when we're nailing something? So funny. These guys are so funny. NSA, hi, CIA, LRF, I don't care who's listening. You know what? I want them all to tune in, because I want them all to know we got this shit figured out. This is fun. Yeah, okay, thank you. I think that was Karina. Was that Karina that tagged me there? Yes, thank you, Karina, baby. Yeah, so, it's about...
So you're asking me about the red from the energy?
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay, so I assume we're talking about from a chakra standpoint.
Chakra and or energy fields, you know, like we talk about the violet flame around ships, and you know how you see the red and the blue involved with alternating colors.
Well, there's a couple different things. I mean, first of all, we've got that business with the refraction, you know, and with the speed, you know, usually like what I'm trying to think of, if that's kind of like a Doppler effect, where you're going to see a slight reddish haze or you'll see a slight bluish haze, depending on what side of the phase it's on. You know, when it starts moving from one side of the phase to another, it's going to adopt a color. But typically, when we look at red, you know, red is a low number on the vibrational from a color standpoint, as opposed to your violet, which is a very high vibrational color. We look at chakras, and for instance, like when we talk about the quartz crystals, when we compress a quartz crystal, it actually produces a violet chakra, or a violet color. And this is amazing, because you know, when we put a quartz crystal inside of an orgone device, which is resin, and it compresses it, and it causes it to emit that piezoelectricity, it actually emits a violet glow, which indicates life, and it indicates a very high vibration of life too. A lot of times we talk about people being indigos, you know, indigo children, and this usually indicates that they have a very strong violet glow in their crown region, you know, their chakras, and this indicates the person that has a very high level of spiritual development. But this isn't to say that this isn't going to change. I mean, because this can go from a violet color to a blue color to a green and even a red. But again, you know, the red is very low vibrational, and I suppose if I had to look at red, I would say that red would often be associated with our root chakra, our base, which is basically a sexual region. So you know, yeah. So when you see red, you know, red hearts and what have you.
Commercial intercourse. Now
there you go. The word commerce. Look it up. Yeah.
Peter, I can say this. The only way I can say this so people will get it. What the red box does is it is exemplifying the statement stated previously. you're fucked.
Again, you guys need to type this down too. I'm looking at.
Don't worry, you don't need to hear that. The listeners did. It's all good. They know
consciousness.
Yeah, base consciousness. So that's exactly what's happening. But in the terms of the red being the lower chakra, why didn't we tie this together before? Lower chakra of the sexual energy, which is where they delve in. They're all about the material aspects, right?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you one thing that I think is kind of fascinating about these colors and the chakras and from an energy perspective, and that is if you look at a male and a female, we both have energy traveling we both have energy traveling in both directions, but a male typically has more energy going downwards and a female has more energy going upwards. And yet we both have the same chakra systems with the same colors and the same positions. So when you think about this energy traveling through the body, it's fascinating to consider these colors at these various different points. Does this mean that the waves, that the energy passing through our body is actually at that specific wavelength when it reaches that zone? These are fascinating things to consider. And I know that. Well, when we correct chakras and when we actually are healing chakra points, a lot of times they'll use certain colored stones or colored crystals, and they'll place it over that point on the body. And people say, well, it's because the stone resonates at a certain vibration. I don't really believe that. I believe that the stone is acting as a filter of that specific color wavelength, and as the energy passes through your chakra points from front to back, perpendicular to your main up and down energy flow, that they actually pass through these stones, that the stones act as a frequency calibration or a wavelength calibration.
Okay, now, excuse me, the solar plexus region is green, yes?
Balance.
Yeah.
Okay, you want to address balance. The thing about balance, which is really important, is that, as I understand it, we need equal amounts of this male and female energy flowing through us to achieve a state of enlightenment and proper balance. And this is very difficult for an individual to do, especially if you've got a guy that's extremely masculine, a lot of yang energy. He's not going to have a lot of female energy, or a woman that's very feminine. She's not going to have a lot of male energy. And this is why we seek out partners. And if you look at a human conjoinment, during sex, that is a tantra process. And so what's happening is when you're face-to-face, missionary type situation, your chakras are actually lined up. Now, so there's a couple things that's happening. A circuit is formed. The body forms a circuit. Plugs into each other, so to speak. And the male energy travels down, the female energy travels up, and what happens is when you complete this circuit, it creates a circular circuit for this energy. So it's flowing up through the female, down to the male, up to the female, down to the male, and over and over and over and round it again. And it's this increased flow which kind of acts like a flood of water going down a little gully. It's going to wear away the sides of that gully, and it's going to widen it, and it's going to make it able to have increased flow. And the other thing that happens is that when our chakra points are lined up, crown to crown, root to root, we're pumping more energy through each other in this way, and it's enhancing these areas too. So there's a lot of benefit to being able to spend time with somebody and be connected and allow that exchange of energy.
Yeah, I was just one thing. I don't know. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, actually I can hear you. How about that?
Oh, okay, excellent. What I'm looking at from the ethereal aspect is we have the indigos and the violet flames. Okay, and I see them as coming here to try to balance out that low chakra red energy that the system has literally, permeated this planet with. So it's like a set of traffic lights. Third time the charm. Third time today. You've got red, yellow, red, amber, and green. Green always means go, and the solar plexus is your stargate. That's the green zone. That's the emerald life, or the emerald energy. So what I'm seeing is just bear with me here. The violet flame coming in to balance out the red flame, as it were, in order to get everything centered again into that green chakra area, the heart zone, solar plexus.
Uh-huh.
just anyway, I'm going off in a million different directions. You kind of know that already, but
well, you know, I appreciate that, and this is one of the things though about this kind of information is that it's so hard to see the big picture that the only way we're even going to begin to understand is we bounce these ideas off each other. You know, we don't really understand, but we're kind of thinking out loud, and hopefully something's going to stick, and we're going to come to some understanding.
It's going to be the epiphanies, you know. Again,
well, I want to talk about indigo children real quick.
Please.
You know, the thing about the indigo children is that yes, they have a slightly different DNA. They've got multiple strands of DNA, and they're more psychically gifted, and yes, they do have that violet energy going on. But the thing is one of the biggest jobs that they have to do here on this earth is to help us all become enlightened, because it is about sharing information, it is about teaching each other and trying to bring everybody up to a certain level of enlightenment, because it's almost like we all need to graduate at the same time. We all need to get everyone up, and our level of knowledge is increasing exponentially. The more times we do shows like this and reach people and connect with them and wake them up, and they go out and they wake up their family and their friends, these are all ripples in a pond. And the other big thing is that these changes that are coming are going to be terrifying for a lot of people. They're going to be new versions of reality are going to come along that people are not prepared or programmed with to comprehend, and they're going to have a hard time, and they're going to be reduced to people in fetal positions, sniveling on the ground. And this is where these indigo children and these people that are awake will come into play. They will be the ones that will help to spread out the terror, comfort people, and show them the way, and help us all to get through this transition in as peaceful as method as possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well,
can you hear me, Steve?
Yeah, Tony, you're coming through good.
Okay, that's great. Carry on, Pete. Sorry.
Yeah, well, like Kate was, everything comes back to the terminology, how they use it in their whole system. The cells, charge, discharge, everything deals with electromagnetic flow. Like the sinoatrial node that runs your heart, that's your ticker. You know, it runs out. You go to the hospital and get you a new pacemaker. You get a pacemaker, but it's all about electromagnetic flow and getting but in their system of their wordsmithing in their system. They use this terminology. And we don't see past in how they're using it. It's just like when you have court issues. Look at the word issues, ISSUES. When a baby is born, we have a new issue, i.e. the birth certificate bond created at the beginning. The doctor cuts the cord. They create the new child is born birthed into the system, and they bring it forward via the birth certificate bond, and so they're collecting up their chattel property, and you're literally declared a decedent. So their whole system is really designed, and it's right in your face about the estates and how they're operating and how they've literally robbed you from birth, and they're using your res. That's why they want you to claim the word resident, so they can use your energy. Everything comes back to this energy flow, and they're collecting it on your behalf because they consider that you gave it over when you registered this, that. Look at the words regis, registered. They're collecting all the energy, and it's ironic that they declare everybody dead from the beginning as decedents. But yet they move forward into their system, and they can only deal with like entities. That's why you're considered an entity, a decedent, under 3002, which is their code. But they're telling us everywhere, if you just look, I cover the W-2s, W-4s, 1099s. They're not income tax forms at all. They're estate and gift tax forms. I told that to my CPA sister-in-law. She thought I was crazy, and I printed the documents out of the IRS's own 6209 code and showed her the proof. But it always comes back to they're collecting our energy. So they've stepped in the middle and made claims against all parties, but it's all about the energy source, and they've collected it and now we're collecting it back. And I'm fixing to turn their world upside down a little bit with the little. I'm going to send them some love because everything has to do with the box. We just found out, like I say, I was reading through. I couldn't find anything about the box on anywhere on the system. I Googled the hell out of boxes, red boxes, why a document would be put in a red box, and then I go over to the insurance section and find, they're talking about this circle or this of 4. I think it's called Rule of 4, and you have Rule of 8, and it's in their code. So when you put everything in a box, it basically, I guess, diffuses that insurance issue because it's all insurance. The whole system is one massive limited liability corporation, and they're claiming on the backs of the masses as decedents in the system. So it's ironic. As a matter of fact, like I said before, I pulled it all together. With they have us in all 50 states. You can look it up, revocation of death, and it shows that if you've registered over, they consider abandoned property after 7 years, sometimes sooner. So it's, they're hiding all this information in plain sight, but it's all about electromagnetic flow, making a claim against you. They never have a valid claim. They just put forth the claim, and when you stand in the breach, so to speak, and you go before those ecclesiastical black magic courts, they are making a claim on the decedent, that fiction name they created from birth. So anyways, it's ironic how all this deal with chakras, energy, it's all about the energy. And so they've tried stealing everybody's, and there's nothing new in Rome. They've been doing this for 2,000 years. So it's ironic how all this stuff pulls together, even what you're speaking of. Yeah, it's all about energy source, folks, at every level. And we're pulling all the loose ends together and sort of tying in a nice little bow. They don't want us to know that we have the power. You are electromagnetic. You are operating in a capacity. And look at the word I use, capacity, capacitor. They want to complete the circuit. That's why they send you to circuit court, so they can create the bonds and create the energy and claim the energy. And they've been doing this for a long time, but I've uncovered a plethora of really, really good stuff that I think is going to help a lot of my brothers and sisters recollect their own power and their own energy, because we do have the power. They just didn't get the memo yet.
Oh, they're getting one. They're getting one first of the week. I went out today and I got my little blood jabbers. So I'll be making up some nice seals.
And we make sure we put that document in a box. Yep. Brother Michael's already hot on the Crunchberry Trail, creating my boxes on multiple levels.
On hemp paper.
Oh yeah, hemp paper. Yeah, we'll tell them. Hey, we'll tell them to put that in their hat and smoke it.
That's exactly what's going in. Beeswax and blood for the seal on hemp paper, boxed in red with the circle of 4s and the circle of 8s all around it. We're going to use our own magic against them using their own dark reds. Deal it back.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay. Well, we've got to apologise to Stephen here, guys, because Stephen hasn't got a... he doesn't understand exactly where we're coming from on this.
I'm pretty psychic. I think I know what you guys are talking about.
Oh, yeah.
We've been trying to bust serious lies, serious constructs, and serious. What's basically happened, Stephen, is we've been taken into a situation whereby we've been tricked into a construct of law, of politics, of money, of lack, of no such thing as free energy. You've got to buy this, buy that. You've got to sign here, stamp this, do that. You must have a license. You must have a birth certificate. You must have a passport. This is what you've got to do. That's what you've got to do. And we've fallen for it by our lack of. We've basically fallen asleep at the wheel. And that includes off-world technologies and religions and all these sorts of things where we've been led into blind alleys. And when you're in a blind alley, you don't know where to move and you're trapped. And that's exactly what's happened to us on many, 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 many different levels, including hidden technology and the truth about these things. So what we're all about is uncovering it all. No matter where it goes, it doesn't matter. If it's hidden, let's bring it out, let's have a look, and then we can deal with it.
Yeah. I was going to just mention one thing. What we're talking about here is the magic word that Santo brought to the table a little while back. One that's been hovering around for a while, but it's been codified. He's brought together all the astrotheology and brought all the sciences together in one, and we're tying the rest of it together in syncretism. And I guess when does synchronicity.com come alive, Tony?
Next week.
Next week, okay. Just wanted to let people know that that's what we're working on, syncretism, bringing it all together. That's why we have people like Peter and Steve and Tony and myself and Santo and Bill Donahue and everybody coming together to the same table, and we're bringing all these different layers that all intermingle in this beautiful, woven fabric that we're unraveling finally. This web is coming apart at the seams. I love it. It's beautiful. It's about bloody time,
It's awesome stuff, and a lot of it as well has got a lot to do with the Templar information, because the Templar information was hidden for a reason. It was kept back from the masses so that the masses would get deeply involved in dualistic and duality. We are like rats in a maze. We've had to experience this maze firsthand by our own free will acquiescence, I might add. Because we had to learn from it. And now we've actually got to the point where, we're starting to get it now. Now it's time to turn around and actually come back out of this into a beautiful golden age, if you like, of freedom of information, of truth, of none of the bullshit anymore. Pardon my French. But the basic information is we need the truth. If I took my car to a mechanic and said, my car's on the drive, can you fix it? He'll turn around to me and look at me as if I'm mad and say, I don't know, I need to look at it first. And that's the situation we find ourselves in. Until we know what's wrong, we don't know how to fix it. And of course, what we're doing here is basically the A-team is trying to fix it. Let's figure out what's wrong, and then let's get in there and do something about it.
Well, you guys, we talk a lot about technology. We're talking, the Tesla technology and everything that's going to be released and how that's going to change our lives. But what I really try to focus on, what I want to try to teach people is that our brains can do just about anything that a device can do. And this is, it's the same way as if you were to depend on a calculator all the time for doing simple math. You'll never have those skills in your head to do it in your head if you're using a device all the time. In healing, we have the same thing. Anything I can do with a crystal, I can use my hand for. And a lot of these, when I'm dealing with these Templars and these guys, they tend to be utilizing alien technology and advanced technology for everything. But then we're coming along from a metaphysical, spiritual background, and we're able to do everything that they can do. We have channelers providing us with the same information that they're getting through alien technology to access the Akashic records. The beam ships, we talk about the capacitance and the ion drive systems. I mean, if you look at a human is no different than a big magnet or a capacitor, and I see no reason why we can't levitate our bodies the same way that these beam ships levitate. We certainly have the mechanical ability to do that. It's just remembering how to do it. So, and as we move into this fourth density, what's going to happen is our creative skills and our ability to manifest and alter reality accordingly are going to increase exponentially, and this is very important. So when we look at the future and we look at what's coming, we really have to try to have an open mind and not to put everything into a perspective based on our what we visualize reality to be in this level of reality that we're in right now. It's going to be completely different. And the more you prepare now, the more you develop your psychic skills, your spiritual skills, and the more you devote yourself to helping others and this sort of thing, the more prepared you will be when we finally do go through this transition, and suddenly all of these skills and abilities are going to become apparent. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Well said. I completely agree with everything you said. We are the embodiment of, we are gods on earth. We're in God's school, guys. It's that simple. The problem I get is that most of our DNA has been turned off and most of our abilities have been turned off. But then again, would you give a 5-year-old a loaded Kalashnikov? No, you wouldn't.
No. Nope. But by the same token, I would let them handle it and let them see what it's like and let them get that image into their minds. That's just training. But I used to work these gun shows, and when I was in the gun business, and I'd see these little kids. They'd come by and they'd be looking at the stuff on my table. And I'd say, "Hey, Dad, let me talk to your kid there for a second." He'd come up, and I'd say, "Here, hold this, put it on your shoulder, feel it, use the action, da da da." And I'd say, "Okay, now tonight, when you're having a dream, and if some monster's attacking you, you're going to be able to pull out this gun, and you're going to be able to use it because you have this mental image in your mind." So yeah, sometimes creative skills need to have a visual, tactile input to help us envision these things that we want to envision.
Absolutely. If we've never experienced it, then how on earth could we possibly be expected to use it?
Right.
And that's the point where we're coming from. It's like, unless we know what's wrong and unless we know what's happened and how it's happened, how on earth do you expect us to fix it? Exactly the same situation. Anyway, thank you ever so much for coming on tonight, Steve. It's been awesome. We do still have 5 minutes to go, but I'd like to just sort of like throw the board open for Kate and Peter and yourself just to get your information out, and we'll start with you, Stephen. Where can we get your book, and we can start from there.
Okay, great. Again, the name of the book is Lasers, Cavers, and Magic. And that's Laser, no Z, Cavers, Caver, and Magic, of course, with a G and a C. And that's at lulu.com, Lulu. The paperback is $18.95 US. We just lowered the price, and the ebook is $7.95, which is pretty reasonable, and you can get that instantaneously. I would like everybody to write down my email, which is law17gun@aol.com, and that's LAW17GUN@AOL. And you could use that to access my Facebook page, because I would like you guys to definitely send me requests or friend requests on Facebook. And you can also use that information to find my videos on YouTube and just about anything else that you need. So I appreciate that.
Hey, that's great. I typed your email into our Skype chat room, which you have yet to accept my Skype contact request. So as soon as you do, I can get you into our room. I'd like to cordially invite you into a wondrous little circle of beautiful minds that I know you'll resonate with, because we're all bringing something quite unique and quite absolutely the same as everybody else. And that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the synchronicities. And yeah, this is another amazing night. So I just want to say thank you, Stephen, for coming on. And we'll get you on. I might do a special edition with you next week. I've already invited you on to Awake Radio for next Wednesday morning, which is 8 to 10 a.m. your time.
Sounds good.
And I'll give you a heads up ahead of that so that we can do that. So for those that are listening, you can tune in next week at awakeradio.co.uk. I'm good. We got 2.5 minutes left here, Tony.
Okay, Peter. I know you haven't said a lot tonight, mate, but can you give us some of your information and where people can find out what your information is about, please?
Yeah, you got privatis.me, privatis.me. And that's a plethora of information. I'm fixing to open up the bond window here very shortly, as well as the medical side of the house on multiple alternatives to fix pretty much anything from cancer to diabetes to all these excellent modalities that are available for literally pennies, and they don't want us educating the masses on the real truth on how to get their bodies right. They want to keep them in a constant state of being unfixed. So privatis.me. And help yourself, folks. Definitely go watch Changes on the Horizon, Part 2, on the video page.
Excellent. Excellent. Just to finish off there, we've got some serious echo that's coming through here, but anyway, regardless, again, one of the things that we're discussing on this show is how we've been lied to. The technology's been hidden, the truth's been hidden, the ancient secrets have been hidden of who we are, why we're here, what we're here for, and what it is that we're truly trying to achieve on this planet. Wow, it goes everywhere. Pharmaceuticals, it goes into, politics, it goes into the numerical system, it goes into sciences, it goes absolutely everywhere. We have been lied to. We're uncovering the truth of the situation, and we hope to hear more people coming to the show. Freedom Reigns. Thank you for Freedom Reigns, and thanks for the platform for getting the information out there. And with that, as I say, my website is Blueprints, or my book is Blueprints of Cosmic Consciousness, which will give you the basics. And the website is awakeconsciousawareness.com. That's awakeconsciousawareness.com. And for that, it's good night for me. Thank you, everybody, for attending, and over to you, Kate. Good night.
Yes, thank you so much, Steve. Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Tony. Another great show hosted tonight. Awesome stuff. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in to Cosmic Blueprints here on Freedom Reigns Blog Talk Radio. You can get to the website at freedomreigns.us. Much love to all. Do something. Change the world now. Love you all.
Very good.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
And after that, I got involved with the Billy Meyer people and got exposed to Pleiadians, alien technology, beam ships, all of the reptoids and the different entities and all of their politics. Also got exposed to Bilderbergers and Templars and the underground facilities and everything involved with that. This led to a period of research in metaphysics and spiritual growth, and eventually becoming a Reiki master and a healer and a psychic. And that's my primary focus nowadays, and to get out there and teach people how to expand their own psychic skills.
Excellent. Beautiful stuff. I'm not sure actually where to begin. I suppose the easiest thing, possibly the best place to start, is the actual speech that you gave to them last weekend or the weekend. I don't know if you want to just give people the overview on that, and that'll be enough to start with.
Well, sure, I don't mind. We spoke about this briefly last night, with your audience, primarily because we were discussing the involvement of the Crown and the Queen with some of these Templar organizations and whatnot. But the big thing that I was revealing here this weekend over at the Alchemy event in Irvine was the fact that there's a base here, a big underground base in the Los Angeles area, which I believe is actually the crown jewel of the entire underground base system, and it's also the weakest link in the House of Cards because it's built underneath the Getty Museum, which is it's a civilian structure. It's privately owned, of course, by the Getty Foundation, but it's unlike all the rest of these top-secret military bases. They tend to be on these bunkers. They tend to be located on bases or on federal property or in airports and things that we can't get easy access to. So this is probably the one facility out there that the public can actually walk around on top of and get really close, and at the same time have no idea of what they're actually standing on.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been lucky enough to hear your speech, which I'll post a link up to in a moment. But you were saying how it's built nuclear-proof, and you were talking about the elevators and the armories within the museum, all sorts of arts and treasures that are stored in there. I wonder if you could give us a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, the Getty Museum was opened in roughly 2000, and it took them quite a few years to build this, kind of reminiscent of the Denver airport, over budget and all that sort of thing. But a few things that are curious about it. For one thing, the foundation, when they poured the concrete foundation for the building, it was the largest continuous pour ever made.
Okay, good evening and welcome to, oops, make sure I got that right. Yeah, there we go. Welcome to Cosmic Blueprints, the offshoot and the partner and part of Outside the Box. Hi, I'm co-host Kate of Gaia. Just waiting for Tony to get here with our special guest tonight, Stephen Kelley. For those who want to get information on Stephen, you can get his book actually at lulu.com. That's LULU.com. And we'll get him to talk about that shortly as soon as we can get him on the air here. You know, the kind of fun we always have on Freedom Reigns, Outside the Box, and Cosmic Blueprints. And syncretism, you know, for some reason they don't like us talking too much, but that's kind of normal. I'm used to it, and I'm sure you are now as well. Anyway, and as far as I know, Peter will be calling in as well. So tonight's going to be a very outside-the-box show on Cosmic Blueprints, simply because of the work that Stephen Kelley has been a part of and has been witness to and has experienced. We did a show yesterday afternoon for me, evening in the UK, with Tony on TruthCentralRadio.com. And we had interviewed Stephen yesterday as well. So we're well-versed on what Stephen is about, and what we're going to try to do tonight is bring that to you so you get a really good idea of what this is all about. We're going to delve into some things that we have touched on many times, things like time travel, scalar waves, what have you. Tonight I think we're going to be focusing more on the scalar wave and the more scientific side of things, but I definitely want to get Stephen to have a bit of time where he can, tell a bit about his background to kind of get you, the Freedom Reign listeners, and my most beautiful friends, into the loop of what it is we're talking about. So as I'm waiting here for Tony to get on board and for Stephen, first time calling into a blog talk, so we're having a little bit of fun getting him logged in here, but no problem. I did a show on TheseChangingTimesRadio.ning.com a couple of hours ago with Tony and Kat Wolf, and we had the lovely Miranda joining us on that, going into lexigrams and what have you, so definitely a show worth grabbing on the archive side of things. And yeah, a lot of really neat information. We seem to uncover lots of neat stuff every show. So, I got to tell you, you miss one of these shows, you have missed something. So it's a good thing we do have archives. And right now, what I'm doing is I'm going around all the different rooms, posting the links so people are aware of what's going on right now. That's a hard thing. Cosmic Blueprints, hosting someone else's show until they show up. Anyway, trying to think what else interesting happened today. No, just the show, really. That was all that I found to be interesting today. So, and still no sign of Tony, still no sign of Stephen, and I'm waiting for Peter to show up. Oh, we do have some other things coming up on the horizon as far as I don't know, the legal wranglings, whatever the hell you want to call that crap. They like to hit us with in an illusional sense. So we've got lots of neat information there, but give you a few clues as to where I'm taking it in my perspective. Again, it's about gleaning those beautiful pearls of wisdom that we all so often get handed to us, but most times, 99 times out of 100 we miss. With the awakening, you'll find yourself being a little bit more adept at finding those pearls of wisdom, so that you're not so much the 99. Most people are actually missing 100 out of 100, but those that are awakened are probably batting at least a 50-50 now, where they're seeing at least half of those pearls of wisdom that are only going to keep you going more exponential. Anyway, so here's the perspective I'm going at. A couple of tools that I will be using in all future correspondence with those that would want to dupe and rule us. That will include natural, absolutely all organic, no chemical hemp paper, because you want to get the living tree of life, the mother plant of all mother plants on this planet, in her best form. Because if you're going to commit your covenant to any form of paper, it might as well be with the earth herself. And the only way you can commit a covenant with the earth is through your own blood. Symbols and symbology, well, that's kind of neat and fun and everything else. But, I'm kind of one to say I mean it. So my arsenal will include my own A-positive blood, along with some beeswax. Because you don't want to use that paraffin wax. You don't want to use that oil-based wax because it's more, synthetic. I'd rather just go for the real McCoy and get the real beeswax. If you look back through history, you'll know that with researching Robert Morning Sky's Terra paper.
So that's kind of, people think of a lot of concrete. They think of something like the Hoover Dam or something like that. Well, the foundation of this Getty was probably next to the Hoover Dam. This is one of the largest concrete pours ever made. That's interesting. Yeah, it is. When you come to this facility, you'll notice right away that it's on top of a mountain, Santa Monica Mountain. I mean, it's not a huge mountain; it's more like a hill, but it's up there. When you park your car to get to it, you have to park on the bottom of the hill, and you take a tram or a little, like a little people mover that takes you up to the top of the hill. And that's one of the first things you notice, that it's kind of strange that they would do that, but clearly they're trying to limit the ability for people to get too close or to get vehicles close to it, and that's a tactical, strategic thinking, I'm sure. Inside the building, everything is covered with travertine marble, or actually on the outside. It's about 4 inches, 6 inches thick, which in centimeters you can translate that for me, but it's about the width of your hand thick. And travertine is actually a fossilized marble, which is extremely hard. It's very similar to the ceramic ballistic armor that the soldiers wear, or that they put inside of the armored cars. So essentially, the building is bulletproof. And if you look at it, you'll notice that the way it's built, it is like a fortress. It does have towers. It has gun emplacements. It has very difficult to access. The hillsides are very steep, and there's cameras everywhere. They have double cameras, and then they have cameras watching the cameras, and it's pretty secure. And not too far away from the Getty, there's a home on the hillside, just a little slightly below it. From what I understand, this is where all the CIA guys hang out, and they're the ones that provide the security for around the place at night. And they've got a flock of German shepherds that are trained in Yugoslavian, protecting the perimeter. But when you get into this thing, and I'll give you a little quick tour, basically. But when you get off the tram, they dump you out towards the right side of the tram, and then there's a big staircase that goes up towards the museum. Now, if you were to go around the front of the tram to the left, there is an area which is the entrance to the security section. And it's through this security door that you access the lower levels. And you can get in underneath that big giant concrete slab I was telling you about. But if you look at the entrance to the security, it's a walkway.
There's the second book that he put out. Oh, there we go. We got everybody here now. That's going to make Tony and Steve hot. You'll understand the relevance of the bees. And everybody showed up all at the same time. So we got Tony, you there?
I am indeed, Kate.
Okay, good. And Stephen, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me all right?
Yep, and we're going to be joined with another friend of ours who hangs out in our shows all the time. And we're going to let you go ripshot tonight, Steve, so don't you worry about that. Peter, you're live.
Yeah, what do you know? Yeah, they revived me, the decedent, and brought me back to life. So then I got to put a claim in.
I love it. Well, don't forget to get your sheet of hemp paper with a little bit of beeswax. Mix your blood into it and make a nice seal on there, and box it in red and throw a couple of other neat little things on there we'll get into next week. But that's how I'll be sending everything out from now on. See how they like me. Do they like orders? I'm not sure. But anyway, Tony, take the helm. I'm shutting up now.
Good grief. Are you serious?
Yeah, look.
No, it's all good. Okay, hello to everybody out there. It's great to be back on Cosmic Blueprints again. Tonight we've got a very special guest with us, as Kate was actually saying. We've done a show, well, a couple of shows, on the information that Steve has just made public. Basically, Steve's just gone public with some information about a museum that's got some pretty interesting things under it. He's gone public about some what we call the tubes, which are some very high-speed craft that run under the surface of the Earth to various places all over the world, really, and lots of other interesting stuff, including other types of technology and free energy, anti-gravity, scalar weaponry, and all sorts of other things. So, hello, Stephen. It's a pleasure to have you on the show, mate.
Great to be here.
Excellent. I've just listened to your interview or should I say your speech, and it's some incredible stuff. I don't really know where to begin. There's so much material in there. It'd be easier, really. We've got quite a large audience with us tonight, so it'd be easier, really, if you give the people your own background, and that'll give everybody the starting block so we can get the show underway. So over to you, Steve.
Okay, well, as you know, it's quite a long story, and it covers quite a few years, but in a nutshell, worked in the electro-optics industry and the defense industry for quite a few years, went off on my own, got hooked up very quickly with the CIA, and also led into being associated with the NSA,